Rose learned very early in life that not everyone who gives birth to you plans to stay. When she was 6 years old, her mother packed a small suitcase one quiet morning and left without looking back. She told herself she was too young, too beautiful, too full of dreams to be confined by marriage and motherhood. She wanted the world. She wanted freedom.
That was the day Rose learned her first painful lesson. Sometimes, the people who should protect you are the first to walk away. Her father, Mr. Uche, tried to raise her alone at first. He loved his daughter, but love without strength can still leave a child exposed. Loneliness eventually pushed him into remarriage, and that decision changed Rose's life forever. Her stepmother entered the house like a quiet storm. She was not cruel at first, just firm, controlling, and deeply obsessed with how things looked to the outside world. She believed reputation was safety. She believed money was protection, and she believed obedience was the highest form of peace. Soon, Rose understood that her place in the family was not equal. Her stepsisters, Muche and Chichi, were treated like precious jewels. Their mistakes were forgiven. Their desires were funded. Their futures were planned loudly and proudly.
Rose, on the other hand, was trained to endure. Whenever conflict arose, Mr. Uche listened to his wife. Whenever Rose cried, she was told to be grateful. Whenever she questioned unfairness, she was reminded that she was lucky to have a home at all. And so she learned another lesson. A child who has no defender must learn wisdom early.
The stepmother had one obsession: to see her daughters married to wealthy men. She succeeded, at least on the surface. Muche married a man who drove expensive cars and wore confidence like perfume. Chichi married a man who lived in a big house and entertained important guests. The community praised the stepmother endlessly. She walked with her head high, telling anyone who would listen that she had raised her daughters well. But wealth that comes without integrity is a guest that never stays long.
Muche's husband was later arrested for shady deals and fraudulent transactions. The same people who once admired him now avoided saying his name. Chichi's husband, on the other hand, was exposed as a caretaker pretending to own another man's property while the real owner lived abroad. His riches were borrowed, his pride inflated, his marriage built on illusion. Yet, even then, the stepmother refused to see the truth. Pride is stubborn when it fears shame. Rose watched all of this quietly. She said little, she learned much. By the time she was grown, Rose found work in a small tailoring shop in the city. The shop belonged to Mrs. Solomon, a strict but business-minded woman, and the head tailor was Mrs. Obina, a woman whose tongue was sharp but whose standards were fair. Rose worked long hours, sewing, measuring, cutting fabric, fixing mistakes that were not always hers. She earned little, but she worked honestly. Her stepmother still took part of her income. Mr. Uche allowed it. Peace in the home mattered more to him than justice. And so Rose carried another burden silently.
One rainy afternoon, a man walked into the tailoring shop looking like someone life had forgotten. His clothes were worn. His umbrella was broken. Water dripped from his sleeves onto the clean floor. Mrs. Solomon frowned immediately. She did not want trouble. But Rose saw something else: dignity struggling to survive. She offered the man a towel and something to eat. That act of kindness would become the turning point of her life. His name was Divine. Divine was not ignorant, and he was not lazy. He was broken, but honest. He had once worked as an accountant.
He had made terrible decisions with money that was not his. He paid the price. Prison took everything from him, his family, his reputation, his confidence. What remained was humility. Rose listened without judgment. She did not excuse his past, but she did not define him by it either. Over time, they spoke often about mistakes, about faith, about rebuilding a life one honest step at a time. Slowly, without noise or drama, love grew. It was not the kind of love that shows off. It was the kind that survives silence. When Divine eventually asked Rose to marry him, he did not promise wealth. He promised effort. He promised growth. He promised integrity. Rose chose him, not because the road would be easy, but because her spirit was at peace. That decision ignited a firestorm. Her stepmother declared that Rose had shamed the family. Mr. Uche remained silent, torn between truth and comfort. The stepsisters laughed behind closed doors, and yet Rose stood firm. The wedding was small. The hall was quiet. And just when the ceremony was nearly complete, the stepmother arrived, announcing loudly that Rose had married a nobody, that she would suffer, that hunger would humble her foolish heart. But Rose did not respond with anger. She responded with clarity. She chose character over applause. The marriage that followed was not romantic. It was refining. They lived in a small shack. Rain leaked through the roof. Food was rationed. Dreams were delayed. People mocked them openly. The stepmother spread rumors joyfully. Yet every night, Rose and Divine prayed, not for riches, but for wisdom. Divine studied, Rose saved. They worked until exhaustion became routine. And slowly, quietly, God honored their discipline. A small business grew, then another, then another. No shortcuts, no deceit, no borrowed glory. Years passed. The same community that once laughed began to whisper again, this time in disbelief. Eventually, Rose and Divine returned to the same hall where shame had once echoed. They invited everyone, including the stepmother. But they did not come to boast. They came to give back to their community. They had opened a feeding scheme to help the underprivileged in their community and were helping with skills development. Rose had learned her final lesson. Vindication is sweetest when it is not used as a weapon. Her stepmother wept. Mr. Uche lowered his head. The stepsisters sat in silence. Forgiveness was offered, not because it was deserved, but because bitterness is too heavy to carry into blessing. Rose never reunited with her biological mother. Some doors do not reopen, and that too was a lesson. But she had peace, and peace, she discovered, is wealth that cannot be stolen. This story teaches us that not every shining path leads to peace, and not every humble beginning ends in shame. Parents must not trade their children's peace for pride or wealth, and children must not lose their values to please others. For riches gained without integrity fade quickly, but patience, faith, and honest labor invite God's lasting reward. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. Like this video, share it with someone who feels judged, and subscribe if you value stories that carry wisdom, faith, and truth. Because here, we tell stories that don't just entertain, they transform.